There's a moment somewhere out on the water at Bearhead Lake when you realize the loons are not just calling in the distance. They are calling from the bay right in front of you. The pines close in on all sides, the water is dark and clear, and you understand right then why people keep coming back to this corner of Minnesota year after year. Welcome to Minnesota Explorer, a podcast dedicated to bringing you a new adventure somewhere in Minnesota with every episode. Each week, we'll travel to a different destination, from scenic state parks and beautiful lakes to fascinating cities, historic landmarks, and hidden gems tucked away across this incredible state. If you're gearing up for your own trip, head over to northstartravelers.com, where you'll find gear recommendations to help you travel smarter, plus a full list of our other podcast shows covering destinations around the world. If you love discovering new places and planning your next adventure, follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leaving a positive review goes a long way in helping others find it. Now let's explore Minnesota. Bearhead Lake State Park occupies a quiet but spectacular stretch of St. Louis County, about 19 miles southwest of Ely and sitting just below the southern edge of the Boundary Waters Canoe Area wilderness. The park covers more than 5,000 acres of boreal forest, and at the heart of it all is Bearhead Lake itself, a 674-acre glacially carved body of water whose shoreline bends and curves into two long, sheltering bays that locals have always called the Antlers. The land here has a story written in layers. Far beneath the forest floor, the bedrock is ancient beyond imagining. Ely greenstone and Giants Range granite, rock formed by volcanic activity and ancient seas more than 2 billion years ago. Then, the glaciers came, grinding and reshaping everything. They carved the lakes, pushed the hills into rolling ridgelines, and left behind the jumbled boulders and polished outcrops you see today along the shoreline and in the road, cuts through the park. The land was not built for farming or industry. It was built for water and pine and cold. By the early 1900s, loggers had found their way to Bearhead Lake. A sawmill was built on the south side of the lake and operated until 1911, stripping the old-growth white pine that had stood here for centuries. What grew back in the decades that followed was the second-growth forest you walk through today, tall red and white pines on the uplands, spruce and balsam fir filling in the slopes, paper birch and aspen shimmering along the edges of every opening. Down in the lowlands, tamarack and black spruce and white cedar hold the wet ground. It is not the same forest that the loggers took, but it is a genuine one, and it is alive in a way that rewards patience. The park itself was established in 1961, when the state recognized that this corner of the North Woods deserved protection and a purpose beyond timber. The campground, picnic areas, and roads were ready by October of that year, and the park was officially dedicated on June 26, 1962. More land was added in 1963, and again in the early 2000s. What began as a modest recreational area has grown into one of the most complete wilderness park experiences in the state system. And then there's the story you may not have heard, the one that made national headlines in 2010. In September of that year, Bearhead Lake State Park was voted America's favorite park in a major online poll, capturing 28% of more than 5.5 million votes cast. The park wasn't among Minnesota's most visited. It won most believed because of a mother black bear and her cub whose territory overlapped with the park and who had become an online sensation through a popular wildlife webcam. The story drew attention from across the country, and once people started looking up Bearhead Lake, many of them made it their next trip north. You arrive at the park along a winding county road that leads you slowly into the trees. The park headquarters is the first building you see, and it is worth stopping. Inside, you can register for your campsite, pick up a trail map, and browse the small nature store. The staff here know this park the way guides know the backcountry, personally, carefully, with genuine affection. If you have questions about wildlife sightings, trail conditions, or where the walleye have been biting, this is where you ask them. From headquarters, follow the road down toward the lake, and you will find the main beach and picnic area. Bearhead Lake's beach is unusually sandy and unusually shallow, which means it warms up faster than most Northwoods lakes and stays comfortable well into the summer season. On a warm July afternoon, families spread blankets across the grass, kids wade out into the shallows, and the water glints in a way that makes it hard to leave. The picnic shelter nearby is a good place to set up lunch before getting on the water. Walleyes have been caught from the small dock just beyond the picnic area. a fact the regulars mention with the kind of casual certainty that tells you they were probably there for at least one of those catches. The heart of any visit to Bearhead Lake is the lake itself. The two bays, North Bay and East Bay, stretch out from the main body of water like the antlers of an enormous deer, and they are best explored by canoe. The bays are full of small islands, quiet inlets, and hidden coves that you simply cannot see from shore. Paddle into them and the park opens up in a different way. The shoreline narrows, the pines crowd the banks, and you find yourself following channels that feel genuinely remote even though the campground is only a mile or two behind you. Eagles nest in the tall pines along these shores. Ospreys wheel overhead. If you are on the water in the early morning before the day-use visitors arrive, you will likely have the bays entirely to yourself. Fishing is one of the park's defining draws, and Bearhead Lake itself delivers walleye, smallmouth, crappies, and northern pike. But some of the park's best fishing is on the smaller, quieter lakes tucked into the forest. Eagles Nest Lake, accessible by boat ramp within the park, is well known among anglers for walleye, smallmouth, and northerns. Cub Lake, a short hike from the road, gives up brook trout to patient visitors who work the deeper water carefully. Norberg Lake, also reachable by trail, holds rainbow trout. And the most remote option of all, Blueberry Lake, requires a hike to reach and rewards you with northerns and panfish in a setting so quiet that the only sound is the wind in the pines and whatever is moving through the brush on the far shore. When you are ready to stretch your legs, the park's trail system will keep you moving for days. The main hiking loop circles Bearhead Lake itself in roughly 4 miles, a trail that takes you through stands of red and white pine past rocky outcroppings and along stretches of shoreline where the views across the water open up unexpectedly. Plan for stopping. For a different kind of view, the Blueberry Hill Trail is a short climb of about half a mile that leads to a hilltop overlook with panoramic vistas across the surrounding forest. It is a modest effort for a significant reward, especially in September and October, when the birches go gold and the maples light up against the dark green of the pines. The timing of color up here tends to run about 2 to 3 weeks ahead of the Twin Cities, so if you are chasing autumn, Bearhead Lake is worth the early push north. The Blueberry Lake Trail is the park's longest and most remote route, leading deep into the backcountry through stands of pine and birch and patches of cedar that most visitors never find. The backpack sites on Blueberry Lake's shores are equipped with latrines and fire pits, and in late summer, if you arrive at exactly the right time, you may find blueberries growing wild along the trail. It is that kind of place. The name is not accidental. Wildlife is everywhere in this park, though much of it prefers the edges of things. The borders between forest and water, the marshy ponds where the trail bends away from the lake. White-tailed deer are common, and moose have been seen in the marshes and shallow bays where they come to feed on aquatic plants. Black bears and timber wolves live in the region, though neither is commonly spotted. If you want the best chance of seeing something wild, be on the water or the trail early, move quietly, and pay attention to what the birds are doing. Bald eagles, red-tailed hawks, and ospreys hunt over the lakes throughout the day. The park has recorded more than 100 bird species, including red-breasted nuthatches, pine grosbeaks, red crossbills, and boreal chickadees, birds you rarely see this far south in Minnesota. The campground sits in the northwestern corner of the park near North Bay, and it is one of the better-designed campgrounds in the state system. The 73 semi-modern sites are well separated from each other, and the sites with electric hookups are convenient without sacrificing the feeling of being genuinely in the woods. The comfort stations have modern flush toilets and hot showers available from May through September. If you prefer something a little more sheltered, the park's camper cabins offer bunk beds, electricity, a screened porch, and a deck. Everything you need to sleep comfortably without setting up a tent in the rain. The group campsite has a particularly memorable position on the East Bay, with a commanding view of the water that makes it an exceptional spot for family reunions or group retreats. It accommodates up to 50 people and comes equipped with a water pump, bear boxes for food storage, picnic tables, and outhouses. In winter, the park shifts character entirely but loses none of its appeal. The cross-country ski trails wind through rugged wilderness terrain, and if the snow is right, you will share the trail with deer moving quietly through the trees. Snowmobile trails connect the park to the broader Taconite State Trail, which runs for hundreds of miles across the Iron Range. Ice fishing is popular on Cub Lake and several of the other park lakes. Snowshoeing and winter hiking are possible on the main trail system. The park is quieter in winter, much quieter, but that silence is its own kind of reward. Bearhead Lake State Park rewards patience and return visits. A single afternoon at the beach tells you that the place is beautiful. A weekend in one of the camper cabins, with a morning on the water and an evening fire, tells you why people make this an annual trip. And a few nights in the backpack sites on Blueberry Lake, deep in the trees with no one else around, tells you something about the North Woods that is hard to put into words but impossible to forget. When you are ready to venture beyond the park boundaries, the town of Ely is the natural hub for the entire region, and it deserves some time. Ely is a small town built around outdoor adventure, and it has two institutions that are genuinely worth a few hours. The International Wolf Center on the edge of town is one of the finest wildlife education facilities in the country, with resident ambassador wolves and exhibits that explain the complex relationship between wolves, prey, and the wilderness ecosystem they depend on. The North American Bear Center just down the road does something similar for black bears, including, of course, the bears that helped put Bearhead Lake on the national map back in 2010. If you have children along, plan to spend time at both. If you don't, plan to spend time at both anyway. For history with a different flavor, the Dorothy Molter Museum celebrates the life of a woman who lived alone on a remote island in the Boundary Waters for decades, eventually becoming known as the root beer lady for the homemade root beer she offered to canoeists passing through. Her two cabins were moved to Ely after her death and reassembled on site. It is one of the more unusual and quietly moving museums in Minnesota. For a meal after a long day on the water, the Ely Steakhouse is the kind of place the town has been built around. Reliably good food, an extensive beer list including their own dark oatmeal stout called Steer Beer, and a staff that has been welcoming canoeists and campers for years. The Bucky Burger and the North Woods Walleye are the things regulars order first. If you are starting your day or looking for something lighter, Northern Grounds in downtown Ely is a coffee house and wine bar that serves excellent coffee and fresh food in a warm, relaxed atmosphere. It is a good place to sit down, look at a map, and decide where you want to go next. For lodging, the park's own campsites and camper cabins are hard to beat for the full experience. If you prefer a resort setting, there are several options on the lakes near Ely, including Burntside Lodge on Burntside Lake, which has been welcoming guests for well over a century and offers cabins, a sandy beach, and a dining room with views across the water. That brings us to the end of today's episode. Before you go, a few quick things. Subscribe so you never miss a destination, leave us a positive review to help others find the show, and share this episode with someone who loves exploring Minnesota. And if you're hungry for more adventures beyond Minnesota, visit northstartravelers.com to explore our other podcast shows and browse gear recommendations for wherever your next journey takes you. Your support means the world and keeps these adventures coming. Thanks for joining us, and happy trails.